In today's episode, we're going to be talking about how to burst fire faster. The burst fire weapons in Black Ops 2 are almost always at the top of the pack as far as accuracy is concerned. They're usually also very good at damage or damage per second or have some sort of absurd long-range ability to punish people. However, they are limited by their fire rates. The burst fire ability, by its nature, shoots bullets out very fast, but then there's a delay, and the problem is that people timing the delay, they don't get it quite right. They don't maximize the ability to fire with this weapon, so it usually fires a little bit subpar, and that's what this episode is going to focus on today, is how to fire these burst fire weapons faster and use them at their maximum lethality. In the beginning of the episode, I'm going to have a handful of normal tips, and then I'm going to show you my personal, somewhat secret strategy that not a lot of people know. Easy tip number one, do not spam the trigger or click the mouse super fast. In Battlefield, it's very easy to sort of overspam or oversample the weapons. Here in Black Ops 2, it's easier than it was in previous game, easier than Modern Warfare 3, but in general, just pulling the trigger super fast, just clicking super fast, this is not the best way to go. What you're going to do is accidentally pull the trigger faster than the gun can fire, so on maybe your second, third, or fourth pull, you're going to miss and you're going to misfire, and then the gun's going to stop, and then the delay is going to cool down, but after the delay cooldown, you haven't been able to pull the trigger fast enough again, and you're wasting some time. Tip number two is that you should not wait until after the gun is done shooting to fire again. This seems kind of counterintuitive to tip number one, but just follow with me today. Some people also, myself included, if you want to use these as pure accuracy weapons, you'll shoot and wait for the burst, and then wait just a second or two, or usually like fractions of a second, and shoot again. There's a short delay. You're purposefully shooting it slower than normal in order so that you can control the rate of fire and you're not trying to spam it. However, this is still subpar, suboptimal. Your time to kill, rate of fire, all that sort of stuff is lower than where you would like it to be. So if it's bad to pull the trigger before the gun is firing and bad to pull the trigger after the gun is firing, then the only place left is to pull the trigger exactly when the gun is firing, and that is the best thing to do. To burst fire at maximum speed, what you need to do is pull and hold the trigger while the weapon is firing. I'll say this again perhaps differently. So after the first shot, you have to pull the first shot, and while it's going through its first burst, its first 3 or 4, whatever, you pull the trigger again, and you're trying to pull the trigger at the exact same time the gun is shooting. The natural thing to do, what most people like to do, is try and pull the trigger near the end of the burst, but the best thing to do is pull and hold the trigger during each burst. How the game mechanic works is the game will kind of preload your next shot, but only during the burst. So let's say you shoot once and the gun is firing bullet number 1 and then bullet number 2, and you pull the trigger down and hold it. It's already kind of got the next one loaded in. It'll fire bullet number 3, the short burst delay depending on the weapon will occur, and then it'll immediately fire the next burst, and you can repeat this again. So on the second burst it'll fire bullet number 1, you pull it and hold it, and then it'll fire 2 and 3, and then at the minimum amount of time in burst delay it's going to spray again. The burst delay is just kind of the time between bursts. It's smaller in Black Ops 2 than it has been in previous Call of Duty games, but it's still there. So the goal is to pull the trigger during the burst. This is much easier said than done. It's kind of weird kind of feeling to master, especially on the faster fire weapons like the Chi-Com, but this will cause you to maximize your rate of fire with the weapon. And you've seen me do it here. Sometimes you see me panic. Sometimes it's easier to do just in custom matches than it is in the game. If you don't believe me, you can go test it out. We're going to skip over to some live commentary now so that I can show you this instead of just telling you about it. So this is me in my room with my TV, my Elgato. I'm running 60 FPS, 720p Black Ops 2, so I can do a little slow motion later. My camera's in 60 FPS, so they're going to focus, so they're going to sync perfectly, just showing you that it's in sync here, good to go. I'm going to spam the trigger as fast as I possibly can right now. It looks a little slower because it's in slow motion, but what you're going to notice is I'm sometimes squeezing the trigger more times than the gun is shooting, and the gun maybe isn't shooting as fast as it could be. It's still shooting pretty fast. It's not doing terribly bad, but it could be doing better. I'm doing it again here, perhaps less dramatically. The scuff has the trigger stop, so I don't have to press it in very far, but it's still not an ideal shot. What I'm about to show you is my method, how I pull the trigger and hold during the burst so that it loads the next one. And I'm going to start doing really dramatically here so you can kind of see that I'm holding the trigger down during the preceding burst, and then the next one is going to go. It's kind of easy to get a look at here when I'm doing it in slow motion. That's why I'm doing it that way. And hopefully you can get a feel for doing this too. I'm going to go ahead and fire the next clip. I'm going to try to time the whole thing right. I think I get it mostly perfect, goober up a little bit during the end, but you can see I'm actually holding the trigger in more than most people would while they're burst firing. The thing that a lot of people do when they burst fire is just spam, 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 pull the trigger fast, 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 fast. No, 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 no. You want to pull and hold the trigger while the gun is shooting and not while it's not shooting. You're wasting pulls otherwise. I would like to reiterate that this is not for all scenarios. This is usually for when you want to run a burst fire weapon but you don't want select fire, when you're afraid of somebody getting up in you in close quarters combat and you not being able to compete due to the weird burst delay mechanic. This is for close quarters combat. This is if you want to take a burst gun and rush with it and be aggressive, it's great for that. If you're using this at longer ranges, there is going to be some loss of accuracy at longer ranges if you're just firing at its maximum speed. So it's probably not ideal for that, but it is a good tip, and I hope that you learned something useful, and I hope that you give this a go. I'd tell you to try it in private match first and then try it online. Very, very effective on the SWAT, on the M8A1, and on the Chi-Com. The B-23R is just kind of a pistol, so it's not that big a deal there.